specific adaptation to impose demands. Everybody understands this with basic physiology. Specific adaptation to impose demands. Now, we're not going to get into the physiology of this. We're going to get into the philosophy of it. One of the biggest problems that we find as we teach this all over the world is every one of us, the majority of us, fall into this boat. We're all gym rats. And we fall under the trap of what we call the curse of the gifted. The majority of us are drawn to that gym rat mentality of whether you are just love playing a sport, you love working out, you love CrossFitting. How many of us, and don't raise your hand, how many of us stretch as much as you're supposed to stretch? I said, don't show off. He's like, ah. No. Think about how many of us do the things that we suck at. How many of us spend more time on fixing those tiny little quirks and habits and imbalances and instabilities? Or would all of us much rather do whatever we love? If you guys are good bench pressers, you're like, how many of you guys have ever been like, you know what? I'm not going to do an extra set of bench press. I'm going to go stretch. Yeah, exactly. None of us do that. If you love running, you'll never give up running. If you love squatting, you'll never give up squatting, but you will give up those little things. So when we talk about that specific adaptation to impose demands, remember what your end goal is. All of this. If your end goal to develop your athletes is to make them a better athlete, to give them a better opportunity to succeed on the field, then you always have to come back to the type of demands that I'm imposing on my athletes. Whatever that is. Whatever it is you feel that they need, make sure that you are imposing those demands on them, no matter what it is. Now, when we do a program, we follow a couple of things. Number one, persistent pursuit of perfection, because that ties into exactly what we just went over. My job is to make my athletes as perfect as possible for whatever situation that they are being called to perform in. Which means I want to find that perfect swing notch. I want them to feel that perfect elevation. We've got some good horizontal displacement, and we're going to accelerate through the ball. I want my swimmers to feel that early catch position, draw the head of the humerus into a socket, and then snap through the hips so that they pull themselves through the water. Perfection. Now, exactly what we talked about before is the more stressors, the more stimulus you put into a situation, the less perfect you become, which means your default better be as solid as possible, because you'll always come back to that performance envelope. So think about this. As you're going through an exercise, it's easy to concentrate on that in terms of one of the things that you'll learn later is we go from a neutral hip position when we squat. Everybody always asks us, the majority of time, 99% of the time, we're going to ask our athletes to go knees forward, toes forward, butt straight back on our squats. Always. Now, does that compromise how much weight we can lift? Absolutely it does. My guys could probably squat 100 pounds more if they turn that out and go wider. Now, a very interesting comment was made last time in terms of one of the attendees said, okay, Rafael, I would rather my guys go toes out, knees out, and really drop to death because it helps open up their hips. We found that guys, have a lot of success and they high five and they're so, it's awesome, it's a great feeling and blah, blah, blah. My thought always comes back to what I experienced as a collegiate strength and conditioning coach, and I want you to learn from my mistakes. It was one of my first off seasons at Sam Houston State in Texas, and I worked under a guy, Ben Pollard, who is in the strength and conditioning world, he's one of the best in the country in terms of getting guys to be stronger and stronger and stronger. And we had a defensive lineman who was a young kid. He redshirted. He really wanted to crack the starting lineup. And for those of you guys that are involved in football know, spring training is really where it's at. That's where you try to get noticed by the coach and say, hey, seniors are gone, it's my time. So pay attention to me. So we had a kid that ended up squatting a ton, cleaning a ton. I think he broke all of our records in college off the board. And it was just such an unbelievable feeling when you get a kid that enthusiastic. He comes in every day, he's warming up, he's doing all these things. He's like, oh, this is great. Look at my squats go up, look at my cleans go up, look at my blah, 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 look at my bench go up. And we're just, as a staff, you're just so excited. You're like, this is awesome. This is what I live for. Spring game comes around and you're like, Johnny is going to crush folks. So all of a sudden he gets out there and everybody's all fired up. He gets on the line. Bam. He's on his back. And I'm thinking, you squat 700 pounds. How are you on your back? Next play gets up. Bam. Pancaked. Pancaked. Flattened. Pancake. And I'm sitting there. I'm in awe. I can't understand. As a young strength and conditioning coach, I went from the highest point of my young career to the lowest point. And I remember sitting there, him walking to me. It's maybe halfway into the second quarter, and this kid has got as much heart as you've ever seen. And he is just beat to hell. Second quarter, halfway through the second quarter, I'm sitting on the bench, and he's looking at me like you lied to me. Like you told me that if I got stronger and I got more powerful, I was going to be a badass on the field. You lied to me. And I remember that terrible feeling in my stomach thinking, crap, I'm wrong. I'm completely wrong about how I do strength and conditioning. If my job is to put up big numbers on the board, but that doesn't translate to on-field performance, there's something wrong with what I'm doing as a professional. And it really opened us up to say, hey, how do we change this? How do I get somebody's lifts to translate to on-field performance? And so my answer to that, and all of you guys learn from my mistakes, is yes, I think there's a careful balance between maintaining somebody's enthusiasm. But understand, it is nowhere near as bad as the disappointment that an athlete, not general population, that an athlete is going to experience when they come to you and they say, hey, my 10 muscle-ups didn't help me score that game-winning touchdown. Those air squats that I did not help me make that game-saving tackle. And you're going to have to live with that. As you sit there and say, hey, well, you know, and then you're going to come up with some BS idea about, okay, work capacity and blah, blah, blah. But understand, the end result is still on-field performance. On-field performance. So everybody that has the responsibility and the accountability of training athletes, know 100% in your heart of hearts that it is on-field performance.